Alright, so what you see on the board right here is your warm-up. If you look at your notes right here, there's a section where you can actually write. I'm gonna give you 3 minutes, no pressure. I just want you to answer this question. When you hear the word macroeconomics, what is the first thing that comes to mind? So please explain in about 3 to 5 sentences. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, and go. You okay?
Mm-hmm.
Are we finished?
Okay.
Okay, I'll just went out there then. Okay, finally got stopped. Alright, so just briefly tell me what you put.
I think of money or something decreasing, like a business, like going out of stock
Okay.
because of like the people keep buying the stock.
Okay, yeah, that's a good start, okay? Good job with that. So we're gonna move on. I'm gonna explain what the actual process is, but before we do that, move on. Okay, before we do that, I wanna do the strategy. And the reason why I brought this strategy, because it made me think when you did the personal finance formative assessment, when you did the test, you admitted after you took the test the first time that you misread or you misinterpreted some things and you wanted to retake it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this strategy is it's called rereading, like rereading, okay? So these 2 timers, what I'm simply gonna do is I'm gonna give you this UCLA article. And this article briefly talks about GDP, okay? And this is what gross domestic product is. It's kind of an overview. This article was from 2016, but it is relevant. What I'm doing is I'm gonna assess you simply how well can you read this article, meaning how many words can you get correct. And if you open to the first page, don't worry about the definitions, just simply start where it says the situation on the second page right here,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And I'm gonna give you 4 minutes, and I simply just want you to read, okay? And then as you read, I'm gonna follow you, and if you, like, let's say you mispronounce a word, I'll make note of that, and then what I'll do after the time, I'll give you time to go back and look at the things you got wrong, and then we'll reread it. Cool?
Okay.
Alright.
We're reading it out loud?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ready, set, go.
GDP numbers influence economic and political debates worldwide. In the U.S., investors are...
Okay, that must have been the whole timer. Not too sure why I did that because I moved on from the slide, but we'll go ahead and continue where you left off at, and we'll be about right there. All right.
Investors are anxiously watching GDP reports for hints about when the Federal Reserve might raise interest rates. In China, the government's preoccupation with GDP may be fueling financial and social instability. In Japan, shrinking GDP has been part of the Prime Minister's case for economic shock therapy. Politicians tout GDP when things are going well and enlist it when they're not. Economics often express other data such as debit and government spending as a percentage of GDP and budget. Anxiously take it into account when making projections. Questions about the reliability of China's GDP reporting have seen investors looking for other measures of economic performance, like steel production and car sales. Indiana's noble method of calculating growth has left economics bewildered. The English economics William Petty made the first assessment attempt at calculating national income and experts using double entry occurring in 1665. Substance theories from Adam Smith to John Maynard Keynes offered veterans its modern and current dates to the Great Depression, when U.S. presidents struggled to understand how the economic was faring based on instant measurements such as railroad shipments in the stock market. To the U.S. Congress in 1937, the first estimate of what was then called gross national product followed in 1942. Most countries now tally GDP using data for composition, government spending, investment, and net exports. Governed by United Nations guidelines in the U.S., the Bureau of Economic analyzed synthesis about 10,000 data streams to produce its estimate, usually expressed as a rate of growth, and also subject to revision. Critics tend to agree with Robert F. Kennedy's memorable line in a 1968 presidential campaign speech that GDP measures everything except that which makes life worthwhile. It doesn't directly assess health, happiness, leisure, or equality and fairness. It was never meant to. Kazan himself warned that it wouldn't be a great indicator of social progress. $1 spent building a prison counts the same as $1 spent building a school. This has led to propels for alternative measures with names like the Genuine Progress Indicator and Gross National Happiness. Others agree that the signal-minded pursuit of GDP growth has led politicians to ignore environmental encourage financial risk, and tolerate widening income inequality. GDP also arguably has technically shortcomings. It doesn't accurately track non-market transitions, intangible goods, or the informal economy, and while natural resources don't count towards GDP, developing them does much of the diagonal economic. Google, Facebook, open source software is free to use, and those barely shows up in GDP and the slow pace at which.
Alright, so GDP data and poverty becoming a bigger liability. Is that where you stopped? After liability?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll stop there. Alright. So I took some notes here, and all I did was simply just circled the words that you may have mispronounced or rushed through. One thing I did notice just off the bat, I noticed that you felt like you were rushing to get it done. That's okay. It's just like there's little things that you may have mispronounced. So I'm going to go over there with you, and I'm going to show you the words that you may have mispronounced. I'm not going to say wrong, just mispronounced. That can also go with your accent too, so there's nothing wrong with that. All right, so let's turn to the first page where you started right here. All right, so there's some words that you may have missed, or you had missed. So the first one was anxiously. Okay, I think the X kind of threw you off there.
Yeah.
So anxiously, down here, shock. I think you said shook. Politicians. I think you said Policians. It's weird because the CI make a sh sound. You said debit instead of debt. I think you said analyst, which is analyst. You were good, okay, so that's okay. Reliability. Down here you put India, you said Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
You said be wild, it's bewildered, which is okay. Now, don't think I'm just like, you're wrong, just showing you something. Systematic expenditures, I think you said expedition. Accounting, you said John Maynard Keynes. This is John Maynard Keynes. He's his beliefs were one of the foundations for economics. incarnation, economy, consumption, bureau, guidelines, critics, proposals, you said property, single, I think you said signal, yeah, that's what you said. Degradation, that was close, so I might give you that one. Arguably, depleting, you said depleting, and digital. Okay, I think you said, I think it was dismal or something in that aspect. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, if you look, and we'll get to lessons, I just wanted to show you that strategy real quick. Simply just to read things and make sure that you don't rush through it. So what I'm doing here, okay, I simply put your name there, your grade, your Lexile level. This is what I got from when I looked at your caseload manager. And then I'm simply just going to put the Lexile level of the text. Okay, if I were to ask you for this text, what grade level do you think this article was?
Like 1,000?
Think of like grade, like K through 12.
Okay, maybe 12.
Yeah, you're right, 12th grade, okay? The level was the max Lexile level. You ever use UCLA? It's a cool thing. So the Lexile level was senior for a 12th grade student, which is between the 1,185 and 1,385 range. So you made a few errors, and I just timed you for 4 minutes. So what I'm going to do after our lesson, I'm going to go back and fill all this in, the number of repeated sessions, if you only did one. I'm going to tally the number of words you got correct, and then the number of errors. And then now what we're going to do, we're going to start back where we started for situation.
Yep.
And I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and then you just read.
Okay.
And then I'm going to see how many words you get correct. Okay? Ready when you are. Good.
GDP numbers influence economic and political debate worldwide and the U.S. Investors are anxiously watching GDP reports for hints about when the Federal Reserve might raise interest rates. In China, the government's preoccupation with GDP may be fueling financial and social instability. In Japan, shrinking GDP has been part of the Prime Minister's case for economic shock therapy. Politicians taught GDP when things are going well and enlist it when they're not. Economists often express other data such as debate in government spending as a percentage of GDP, and budget analysts take it into account when making projections. Questions about the reliability of China's GDP reporting cast investors looking for other measures of economic performance like steel production and car sales. India's novel method of calculating growth has left economics be wild. The English economics William Paddy made the first domestic attempt at calculating national income and experience using double entry accounting in 1665. Substance theorists from Adam Smith to John Maynard Keynes offered veterans its modern incarnation dates to the Great Depression, when U.S. presidents struggled to understand how the economic was faring based on exact measurements such as railroad shipments and the stock market. To the U.S. Congress in 1937, the first estimate of what was then called gross national product followed in 1943.
All right, perfect. Okay, so I noticed that for the second time you were able to, you didn't get the words, a lot of words that you got wrong the first time, you actually corrected, so that was good. Now there still made a few errors, which is okay, but the whole aspect of this is you showing growth, meaning you got better as you went, okay? So how do you feel about that?
Good.
All right, so if you could, hand me back your article. Thank you. All right, so now, here comes fun stuff. Now we're gonna go back and actually learn about what GDP is. I just wanted you to read an article about it. If I were to give you a test right now, how confident do you feel about passing it?
Not good.
Huh?
Not good.
And it's okay if you say like a 0 or,
Yeah, 0.
which is okay, that's the whole point, but at the end of of this, our goal is to know what GDP is, okay? So what I'm gonna give you now is a simple pretest, okay? Now, this will be for our participation grade, so simply if you just complete it, you will get 100% daily grade. So here's your pretest right here. It's only 6 questions, okay? I just want you to put your name, the day at the top, and today is the 15th, and then simply answer 1 through 6, okay? Would you like for me to read out the questions to you?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so number 1 is asking, what is macroeconomics? Is it the part of economics that looks at the individual economic behavior of people or businesses? Is it the study of economics that look at the behavior of the whole economy instead of businesses and individuals? Is it the part of economics that looks at the production and sales of macaroni and cheese? Or is it the study of economics that looks at the behavior of business and individuals? Okay. Number 2, all of the following are part of the economy except what? GDP, unemployment, inflation, or food stamps. Okay. Number 3, gross domestic product is what we use to what? Is it to measure a country's standard of living or well-being? Is it to calculate our country's population? Is it to determine how many goods are bought outside of the U.S. or to measure inflation? And remember, inflation was just a general increase in prices. Are we measuring that, or are we measuring the other choices provided? Okay. Number 4, what exactly does GDP measure? Is it population growth in the country? Is it total market value of goods and services produced in a year within a country? Is it unemployment rates in the country during a given year? Or is it CPI, which is Consumer Price Index? Okay. Number 5, write true or false for the following questions. If false, write the correct version in the space provided. So number 5 is asking, is this true or false? GDP allows for changing price levels or a general increase in prices. Is that the definition of GDP? True or false? Okay. And number 6, the expenditure approach calculates GDP by the following equation. GDP equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M, or sometimes GDP equals C plus I plus G plus F. Is that true or false? All right. So let's move on. How do you feel about it?
Maybe like a 40.
Okay. So we're gonna go over this real quick. Pay attention because I want you to understand these answers because we may have to go back to it later on. Okay. So number 1, what does it say?
What is microeconomics?
Okay. So macroeconomics. Okay. The answer should have been B. Okay. Is that what you got?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when we go back, when we talk about prior knowledge and previous lessons, we talk about microeconomics. Remember we did the circular flow, the business and the individuals, and we talk about the flow of money. That's micro. That's when we talk about business and individuals. Macroeconomics is the whole economy. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Number 2, all the following are part of the economy except this should be food stamps. Okay. GDP, we'll talk about that here shortly. Unemployment, we'll talk about that as well as we progress toward continuing macroeconomics. Inflation, that's simply a general increase in price. Okay, we talked about this in microeconomics toward the end. If prices go up, for example, okay, let's say this clicker was $1, and all I have is $1. Can I buy it?
Yes.
But what about if this moved up to 125 next year? Could I buy with my dollar?
No.
So did my value of my dollar go up or down?
Up.
Are you sure? Can I afford it at 125 even though I have $1?
Oh, no, decrease.
It means it went down, right? So if prices go up, what happens to the value of the dollar?
It would go down.
It goes down, meaning it gets weaker. You can't buy more stuff, okay? All right. Number 3, gross domestic product is what we use to, and this is to A, measure a country's standard of living. Okay? And what does it measure? Number 4, it simply measures, which is B, total market value of goods and services produced in a year within a country. So everything that's made within the United States, it counts to our GDP, meaning it counts into the correlation with inflation and everything that we buy, okay? Number 5, okay, your answer should have been false, okay? GDP does not allow for increases in prices. That's the definition for inflation, okay? Easy way to remember that, increase, inflation, okay? And then number 6, okay, I like how you put false. Why'd you put false?
Because they only use the C plus I plus D plus X.
Yeah, that's right, okay? So now, I got what you're saying. The answer is true, and how is it true? This is a formula for GDP, but this is more if we're talking about international, like somebody else's GDP other than ours. But you made a good point. The main GDP, which you use the formula, is what I like to call SIG and X. C plus I plus G, SIG and X, or X minus M. Does that make sense? Cool. All right, so you can put that aside. We'll come back to that later. Okay? So I'm gonna make my way over here. We're gonna take some notes real quick, and some slotted notes. I'm gonna go ahead and follow along, and you just need to write down as we go, okay? All right. So what are we talking about? What's the big word we're mentioning?
Macroeconomics.
Macroeconomics, okay? So macroeconomics is the part of economics that looks at the behavior of the whole economy. Okay? Rather than individual economic behavior of businesses and individuals. So when we say macro, we're thinking everything, okay? Not just businesses, all right? How are we doing as a country, not how are you doing as a business, okay? So when we talk about the economy, and this should be underlined in your notes, we're talking about GDP, gross domestic product, unemployment, okay? This is simply the number of people who do not have a job or are currently looking for one. You can calculate a percentage, we'll get to that as we progress toward this unit. Inflation and the business cycle, okay? So today the 2 points we're really gonna touch on is GDP and the business cycle, okay? All right, so what is GDP? What's up, GDP? All right. So GDP is what we use to measure a country's standard of living, okay? Now what does it measure? Okay, it should be underlined in your notes. It's the total market value of goods and services produced in a year, okay? So I should have that underlined already. What color do you want? Yellow, pink, blue, green?
Blue.
Blue, okay. Let's go ahead and underline that for me, or highlight that in the bold. This is important, okay? This is GDP, the total market value of goods and services produced in a year, okay? We'll watch a video in a second.